Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the October 18th, 2021 special joint meeting between the Lafayette Planning Commission and the Lafayette Design Review Commission. Pardon me. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call, and I'll start off with the design review. I apologize if I get anybody's names wrong. Commissioner Seidel.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Cass.
Here.
I believe that's the last member of design review that I see, and I see on the panelist list. So I'm going to move over to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Heising.
Present.
Commissioner Maggio is not present. Greg, do we have any word on Commissioner Maggio?
She is expected.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mason.
Unmute.
You're on mute.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturm.
Present.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Present.
And Chair Farzan is also present. And for the record, Planning Commissioner Labange will be joining a few minutes late, and we'll announce it when he joins the meeting. And with that, we'll move ahead on the agenda. Do we have any public comments on items not on tonight's agenda or upcoming agenda?
If you do have comments on items not currently on tonight's agenda or an upcoming agenda, go ahead and hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or *9 on your phone. Seeing none.
Thank you. We have item number 4, special presentation. I'm not sure what that refers to be honest with you.
I believe it's residual.
Okay, great. So nothing that I missed. Good, thank you. We're going to move on to the consent calendar, and this is just with respect to the Planning Commission. Do we have any comments on any of the 3 meeting draft minutes from September 7th, September 20th, or October 4th? It does not look like we do. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar from a Planning Commissioner?
I'll move the item, Heising.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take the roll call. Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm.
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Aye.
And Commissioner Farzan. Aye. Thank you. We do not have any continued public hearings. Item number 7, any other business that we need to be made aware of, Greg?
No.
Thank you. And we are moving to item number 8, new public hearings. 8A, it's DR 16-20, Peter Shattuck, owner, C1 zoning. And I believe Jonathan Fox will be presenting the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Farzan. DR 1620 Shattuck takes place on 2 parcels in the downtown of the East End, 3458 Mount Diablo Boulevard, which is the most corner lot, and then just to the north is 1005 2nd Street. 1005 2nd Street serves as the parking lot for the existing commercial building that's at 3458 Mount Diablo Boulevard. So in terms of neighborhood context, to the north, we have multifamily residential. To the east, a senior living facility, Merrill Gardens. To the west, we have the Miramar development, which was approved by the City Council for, I believe the last number was 166 multifamily units. That it's been approved for entitlements that are currently going through revisions, but has not been, is not undergoing construction yet. To the south, we have the Lafayette Police Department, McDonald's, and local kitchen. The scope of work is to demolish the existing commercial building and construct 9 multifamily units. Those 9 units are housed within 2 3-story buildings. There's the southern building fronting Mount Diablo Boulevard. That's 4 units there. And then there's the northern building that contains 5 units. Of the 9 units, one of those units is a below market rate affordable unit. In terms of outdoor living areas and other features that you're seeing on the screen, there are the porches that transition from the Mount Diablo Boulevard sidewalk to the private space of those rental units. They have 3rd-story decks on the driveway aisle facing the north elevation of the most northern building, or south elevation of the most northern building. And then in terms of outdoor living space for the northern building, there's again 3rd floor decks at the north elevation, 3rd story, as well as a backyard patio at the ground floor. These 2 buildings are accessed from a new driveway that is coming off of 2nd Street. There is a public plaza at the corner of Mount Diablo Boulevard and 2nd Street. And you can see here, there's one covered guest parking space with a seating area above. And then on the corner, there is the public plaza with seating, exterior lighting, landscaping, and opportunities for public art. This project requires design review for new buildings in the downtown, as well as a demolition permit for demolishing a structure in the downtown, and is also requesting waivers in line with California state density bonus law. In accordance with SB 330, the city's review is subject to a maximum of 5 public hearings. So that means that the city needs to either approve or deny the project within those 5 public hearings. And the diagram on the left of your screen shows staff's recommendation for the project going through that maximum number of 5 meetings. So first, beginning with the light pink color, light orange color, that was the previous DRC study session. And that was a study session. It's an informal look at the project, a very conceptual project. So that does not count as one of the meetings, but was a good step in getting comments initially. The first meeting is tonight's public hearing, and that's a joint meeting by the Planning Commission and DRC. In this meeting, the commission is going to cast a wide blanket on areas that they want the applicant to focus on as they move ahead and have individual meetings with the design review commission, who will then forward a recommendation to the planning commission, who will then forward a recommendation for final action by the city council. The city council is the final hearing authority based on the specific waivers that the applicant is requesting. So again, PC and DRC are acting as recommending bodies. Framework for review. The project requires findings for design review and a demolition permit, as I mentioned previously. And for the city to make those findings, they need to find that the project is consistent with the general plan, the downtown specific plan, the zoning ordinance, the downtown design guidelines, and the phase 1 objective standards. And again, another major component of the project is California state density bonus, which states that if the project meets certain affordability requirements, in this case, providing 1 of 9 units for low-income households, they're entitled to waivers to development standards, which they are requesting. And we'll touch briefly on each one of those points, documents that the project needs to be consistent with. So the general plan and downtown specific plan, project is in the East End commercial land use designation of the general plan. It has a maximum density of 35 dwelling units per acre, which this is under. The project is in the East District of the downtown specific plan, where housing is allowed by right. The project is in the commercial 1 district or C1 district and complies with the district standards for use, land use, parking, and building height. It does not comply with the limit to the number of stories, which is 2.5. They're proposing 3. The code does allow for a 3rd story setback, 3rd story, but they would need to apply for a land use permit. In this case, they're utilizing a waiver to not go through that process. And it's a similar case has been done in other projects in the East End. They're requesting waivers to the 3rd story setback from Mount Diablo Boulevard, as well as side yard and rear yard setbacks. So they do not comply with those aspects of this C1 zoning district, but the waivers would allow them to build without complying with those. The project is compliant with the phase 1 objective standards, and there's a more lengthy evaluation written by staff, including your staff report. The The phase one objective standards regulate multifamily and mixed use development in the downtown. And for this project, the objective standards would regulate minimum landscaping and also on a point system require architectural details and massing techniques, changes in color material, lighting, balconies, changes in building height as well. You'll find by looking through the phase one objective standards that there's some of them are not relevant, and those are pertaining to creeks, mixed use developments, and open space, which this project does not have. And finally, downtown design guidelines. This is where staff is recommending modifications for consistency with. So we've pulled out these 3 guidelines, which the project could better align itself with. One is to develop a variation in the building form relative to the streetscape to avoid a monotonous building height. Design corner lots by ensuring that the corner has an active use to draw the public into the block, and to incorporate upper story decks, balconies, and rooftop gardens to add eyes on the street. So if you look in staff report and at the end of the report, the list of staff design recommendations, those recommendations are based on these downtown design guidelines. Staff would recommend that the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission take in consideration staff's recommendations, design recommendations as listed in the staff report, review the proposed project, conduct a public hearing, provide direction to the applicant, and continue the item for review by the Design Review Commission meeting on November 24th, 2021. Here for any questions. Thank you.
I realized that was me. So thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions for Jonathan or staff. Let's see, Commissioner Sturm.
Question for staff or request for a reminder. If the applicant was to incorporate upper story decks, would they need to an additional like variance for protrusions on the upper floor?
They would not. It does not include the building height is for the wall, so that we'd measure it to the top of the parapet, and I believe the code allows 2 or 3 feet for the parapet, so they could add a rooftop deck and still stay under 35 feet building height.
What about adding a balcony?
Adding a balcony, as long as the railing of the balcony did not exceed 35 feet.
But it extended into that front landscape setback.
Which are you referring to, a particular portion of the project, Commissioner?
I guess I'm asking about the the southern half of the building having balconies on Mount Diablo or on Second Street on the 2nd and 3rd floor.
I can take a look and pull it up. Do you mind, Commissioner, if I look through that and respond back?
Do not mind. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Mason.
2 questions. If you're looking for the allowable roof height, if we add a rooftop deck, am I correct in assuming that rooftop penthouses such as the stair access do not count towards overall building height?
Correct.
And then second, do we have to make a separate finding on the demolition permit and a finding on this? Because there's nothing really redeemable about what's there already.
There is separate findings for the new building and for the demolition.
Thank you.
And I think historic practice has been to roll all of the findings for the different permits that the project is seeking into a single resolution, laying out each separate set of findings, responding to them accordingly. But you would take motion on one resolution.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for staff? It doesn't look like it. And just for the record, Commissioner Labange joined us at 7:10 p.m. And I believe he was an attendee before that, before coming on as a panelist. So just putting that in the record. And Commissioner Labange, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I just want to, Jonathan, so the recommendations, has the applicant, and maybe you're going to direct us to the applicant, on all the recommendations, have those been, were those presented to them with the anticipation to bring those tonight, or are those after they submitted? I'm just wondering if these are ones that you wanted them to do and they decided they didn't want to do, but you still think they should be done, versus ones that maybe they haven't had that opportunity and they'll tell us tonight what they think.
Yeah, some of these are continuing from the DRC's comments at the study session. So changes to the Second Street elevation, those are continuing. There are some new ones that are specific to this iteration of the project, like moving the balconies from the driveway aisle to the front. So it is a mix of new ones that came up in writing the staff report, as well as ones have come from past iterations. So the recommendations are a jumping off point for the Planning Commission and Design Review Commission, and with the expectation that they're addressed at the next meeting.
Okay, and just so because I like to know the ones they've already been asked, if I'm just trying to confirm that. So the second, incorporate changes in facade plan on the buildings B second street elevation. I'm actually on the staff design recommendations, is like 9 bullet points. Can you just, it'd be helpful if you could just tell me which ones of those they've already been asked and they're not quite, haven't gotten there, versus which ones are new. I got it on the deck, moving the deck, that's for tonight. Can you break the,
Yeah, so the moving the first point, I'll share my screen and point to it. Let's see. So this first one is, let's say, current. Second is adjusting the roof plane for continuous linear building height. That is current. Incorporating changes in the facade plane at the building Second Street, building B, Second Street elevation. That is previous. Fourth is new. Fifth is previous. 6 is previous. 7 is new. 8 is new.
thank you.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Labange?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open up the floor one more time. Do we have any additional questions for Jonathan or staff? It doesn't appear so, so I will open up the floor for the applicant.
Bring in Mr. Shattuck, Mr. Valadez. And I believe that is, well, Mr. Shattuck can advise if there's anyone else on his team present.
Tony, my architect, will be speaking for PSR, or for Peter Shattuck tonight.
Hello.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Jonathan, thanks for the introduction, and thank you, Planning Commission and DRC, for hearing about the project. We're just excited about moving this forward and providing more housing for our city here. I am going to just talk first about some of our project goals and maybe respond to some of the comments that were put out at first, and then I'll I'll go through a deck, which I'll share my screen for. But really, for this project, our goal was to provide well-designed housing that really built on the Lafayette character and made that more accessible to to a greater, more various audience. So I think we've done some of those things with some of the moves that Jonathan has talked about on the project, including the corner plaza, our facade on Mount Diablo, and our rear setback on the north side. So I'll just quickly go through some slides if that's okay. And I also, we have Sharka from Base Landscape Architecture. I think they're in the field somewhere. So if questions come up about landscape, they're available too. So oh, I apologize. I've got a circle here. I'll just try another share. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about this. I'm pulling it up one more time. Okay, there, I'll just leave it alone. Can everybody see the screen? Great. So as Jonathan said, this is our project. This is a view of the intersection of Mount Diablo and 2nd Street. Really wanted to talk first about our Mount Diablo elevation and our approach and some of our thoughts here. We really wanted to kind of have this part of the project do two things. One, continue the retail and sort of urban fabric of Mount Diablo, but also have the project be recognizable as a residential project. So in that aspect, we, as Jonathan had kind of mentioned, we had provided these entry stoops at the front, which provide sort of a visual connection from the street down into that lower level, which is houses an office, either a live work office or a home office, but also is separated by this change in topography and the sort of vegetated and landscape furnishings in between. This is just a view looking at the front elevation, showing that stepping between the sidewalk and the level of the units. On the ground floor, excuse me, on this lower ground floor, having the transparent storefront glazing that kind of continues the retail look of the neighboring properties was important to us, and Jonathan kind of helped us nail down some of those objectives. While the upper floors, the goal and the intent is for those to get broken down with bay windows, changes in materials and changes in plane that provide some change in shadow and plane there. This is that view of the entryway, which we're pretty excited about. We like this idea of a kind of this landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the front stoops, which are at once kind of connected but separated by the landscape and the furnishings. Just taking a step back, this is a view of kind of an expanded elevation of Mount Diablo, which shows the project in relation to the Merrill Gardens project, the assisted living project, and then the soon to be built Lafayette Lane project. And I think it illustrates the consistency of the fabric across the street. Another feature that we're super excited about, and Jonathan had mentioned, is our publicly accessible plaza here on the corner. We kind of left out essentially a unit on this corner in order to provide an open space. And this is one where we kind of envision these armatures, these steel and concrete armatures, which could be used to display local art and artisans' crafts, but also just a place for repose and relaxation, inviting people, just take lunch breaks or waiting for the bus. And this is all owned and operated by the property here. This is not publicly, not a city operated portion of the project. There was a comment about some decks. We love the idea of eyes on the street and the idea of decks looking down. This is our garage for the guest parking, where we kind of take advantage of this outdoor space that this unit is allowed to kind of look down on the street, look down over the art plaza. And we just think this is a very dynamic relationship here. This just kind of shows some of our thinking about the products and specifications of things we're wanting for this plaza. We want it to feel permanent and sturdy, but also fun and festive. And I think Base did a great job in pulling in some good inspirational images and thoughts about that. This is moving around to the north of the site, where this is an easement on the north end, which is effectively our north elevation of the project. But one of the things that we're excited about was the ability of taking the north edge of the building and pushing it back, which allows us to provide rear gardens, rear yards for these spaces, which we think would be a very nice, asset for a family or a multi-generational tenant that might occupy these spaces. I also wanted to touch on one of the comments about 2nd Street. This is a move that we made on this last iteration where we took this corner unit, pushed it back, changed the roof slope so that there really was more variation on this plane, and created an outdoor deck that, again, kind of works on that multi-level eyes on the street comment. These are views of the driveway looking north and south. Just, we really wanted to keep these quite simple and understated, and showing some variation between the north and south, but showing them a consistent approach. Touching on some of the unit plans, I won't go into all of them, but they offer covered parking, of course, in a garage, a ground floor which has an office, as I was showing in the first images fronting Mount Diablo, up to a 2nd floor which has a half bath and kitchen living space, and then up to a 3rd floor which has 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. These are just kind of variations, including our unit B, which has the roof deck over the garage space. The rear units, which have the backyards, which I think would be a nice asset for those. And I won't go through all these, but these are variations on the unit types. These are exterior elevations, which I won't go through all of them. Again, our landscape architect is here. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank you all for hearing the project, and look forward to your comments and moving it forward.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Mason.
Yes, I have 2 questions. One is your office that opens onto Mount Diablo. Are those going to be operable windows so that they could possibly be converted to a bedroom, or is that fixed glass?
So the idea is that so they do have doors that front Mount Diablo, so that could be used as an emergency egress. But the idea was that they were fixed storefront glass.
Okay. Thank you. And then the second question is, are you going to be recording this map for possible later conversion to townhomes, or is this always to be apartments?
These are intended to be for rent apartments.
Yeah, but I know that a lot of
Mm.
times this is specifically set up so that it could also be converted at a later time. And I just want to make sure that we all know what it is that we are approving, whether it is apartments or it is apartments now and 4 years down the road, or actually 10 years down the road, turns in when the statute of limitation ends, it turns into townhomes.
We haven't discussed converting them to condos.
Mhm. Mhm. That's it for me. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Tony, thanks for the presentation. And I think you made a comment about that landscape buffer on the front. I think that's really cool as well. Just being able to step down and get to those front of those units and have a little bit of a space off the street so that, that front door is not right there at the back of walk. So I think that's great. Just a couple questions on that outdoor space above the guest parking. Will that only be accessible to that one unit on the end? Or is there a way that people from that little corner place be able to get up there as well? Because I think I heard you say it was only accessible to that one unit.
Correct. As it's designed right now, it's only accessible to that unit.
Okay. I guess my comment would be, I mean, that gives a benefit to that one unit and then gives them a really cool outdoor space, but it kind of robs everyone else from the use of that. So if there's a way that, I don't know, maybe from the guest parking inside that garage, if there could be some stairs up, or maybe even, I know if you put it on the front, you would steal space from the front to have some stairs, but somehow work it so that the whole of the complex could use it. That'd be kind of nice. So it's just a thought there. And then on the, I guess more of a general question that, I know you made that comment earlier that, this project's creating more housing for our city. And, but it's also taken away some commercial space, which has been of concern to both the commission as well as people in our city, especially that project to the west. That's a big conversion of commercial space to residential. So what triggered your decision, and this might be more for Mr. Shattuck, what triggered the decision from the first application that had a combination of commercial space and residential space? Just out of curiosity.
No, it's a fair question. And we did discuss it. The basic short answer is parking. We couldn't really get it to pencil to provide the amount of parking that commercial was going to required either a variance that we knew we probably couldn't get, and it would result in just not a very useful amount of housing. So in a short answer is parking was the thing we kind of couldn't comply with.
Okay. And I'll have a follow-up question, Jonathan, for you on that. And then on a recent project similar in nature to this, with that central alleyway with buildings on both sides of the access alley, there was discussions about not only access to the garages, especially for those end units. And I see you have the turn templates here. Are those turn templates for Mini Coopers, or are they for decent sized vehicles that can get into those garages?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we're working with a civil engineer who was sensitive to that, and they for the cars they've designed it around an SUV. So they were thinking about a big car for the
Okay.
access to those rear
Not
units.
maybe not a Suburban, but like a mid-size SUV.
I think if I recall, I think their ideal was Honda. It was like a Honda Element, which is kind of a mid-size SUV.
Okay. All right. And then the other thing we discussed that I don't know if it was an issue, but it was in the conversation was trash collection.
Mhm.
Are the residents are they going to be rolling out their individual carts, or is there a common trash spot that's picked up by Waste Management just from one location?
Yeah, more of the former and not the latter. So there's going to be spaces for bins in each garage, and the residents are going to roll out to Second Street once a week. Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll
All
be
right.
picked up along Second Street.
Okay. And then my last question, sorry for all the questions, but you mentioned that easement to the north, on the north side of the lot. Is that why you have the outdoor space? Because you have easement there that you can't build on, or why did you set the building back for that outdoor space?
Well, there is an easement there. We're not coming, we're not really coming close to that easement, but it's an access easement for some of the neighboring properties. So that's there today, and that's going to remain. But we thought that it would be a nice way to step the building back and provide an outdoor rear garden space that we thought was kind of a rare commodity in an urban setting like this.
Okay, so it's an easement. The property's owned by this owner with an access easement, or is it the other way around, that there's an access easement and it's owned by the parcel to the north?
No, the property is all owned by the landowner, my client, with the current easement on it today, and that easement is going to remain.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks, Tony. That was it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Thank you. Tony, I have a couple of questions piggybacking on Commissioner Heising's questions. So the first one regarding parking, and it sounded like part of the reason that the design changed from the study session to tonight had to do with parking. And so did you guys consider any underground parking, either for the previous design or this one, which could also potentially lower the overall building height? So that's my first question.
We did consider underground subterranean parking, and essentially it just didn't pencil out with the cost of that amount of excavation for the amount of retail and housing space that we could get out of it. So we did look at it and had conversations about it.
Okay, so even though it would provide retail in that scenario, financially, it doesn't make sense to provide the retail. Okay, and then the second one for the garbage collection out onto Second Street, on Google Earth right now, there's parking spaces along Second Street. So are those parking spaces going to remain? Because if you have 9 units pulling 3 bins out a piece, right, recycling, green, and I don't know if you have a green bin in this type of situation, but recycling and garbage, that's a minimum of 18 bins. I would assume that's going to take up parking spaces. And recently in Lafayette, the garbage, at least where I live, hasn't all been coming on the same day. It's taken 2 or 3 days each week to be picked up. So I'm just wondering what's going to happen to those parking spaces, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think it's a good question. We're actually one of the things we're working through is a comment that we got from the Contra Costa Fire Department, where we may be having to remove some parking spaces in order to accommodate fire apparatus access. And so there may be a point when we are removing some spaces either on the north or south side of that driveway to accommodate the not just the fire trucks, but also the trash.
Okay, so still working that one out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sturm?
A quick question. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask about accessible access to the first floor office spaces. So understanding that those may be used as live workspaces. It looks to me like there's only stairs down from Mount Diablo, and even from the corner plaza area, there's not sort of a ramp way through. Is that something that you all looked at, and would you be able to provide that?
We did look at it, and we can study a ramp for those units, but we are providing an accessible, our accessible unit is on the northeast corner. And I don't know if it's marked on the plan you're looking at, but that is a unit, just because of the topography of the site, that's one where the ground floor is level with the sidewalk. And so it is an accessible office space. The other ones, because they are residential projects, they don't necessarily have to provide accessible access. But it is something we can look at, because it does, it could be possible from the, from the art plaza to go into that lower recessed stoop area.
Okay, yeah, I know, and I understand,
Mhm.
obviously there's stairs and it's a 3-story living units, but I just, we've had another project like this that is planning for live work on the ground floor, and it's something that's, pretty new in Lafayette. And so when we're looking at this, we're trying to think of all the different, issues that may come up with that. And accessibility is really important to me. So even if it's not required, I think it would be good to incorporate, especially if it's not, difficult to do. And actually, my other question was, did you look at exterior balconies on the Mount Diablo frontage and the 2nd Street frontage, other than the one on the back corner?
On the 2nd Street frontage, we do have, there are balconies looking out on the, there's the one over the garage, and then 2 on building B. On Mount Diablo, we did not, just because we wanted to, at least in our planning thinking, the living room is right up to that space, and it seemed more useful to have the outdoor space be accessed from the master bedroom. So in that case, it looks out to the north over the driveway. But it is something we can study, and Jonathan had raised that in his staff report, so it's something we'll be looking at.
Do you know how much space you have from the building face to the setback?
We are right at the 10-foot setback on the ground floor, but then we step back about 3 feet to provide some of the, just to comply with some of the objective standards of the building mass, stepping back. So it's, I believe we have it set back at 30 inches from the ground floor unit. So it kind of wedding cakes back, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Do we have any further questions for the applicants team? Commissioner Mason?
Sorry about that. One more question. Is your intent to provide separately meter all 9 units, or have one meter for everybody?
I believe the intent is to have them all separately metered. We did have a conversation about that. You're talking about electrical?
Actually, specifically water. In other words, if they're separately metered, it's easier to condominiumize them in the future. If it's all single meter, it's more, this goes back to the earlier question.
Oh, sure.
It's more likely that they will remain apartments.
We haven't talked about the water meters, but we have talked about sub-metering electrical. But that's definitely a detail we'll be getting into.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Wanted to reply to Commissioner Sturm's comment about the balcony. So it's currently, if you look at the north building, the northmost building, the setback is taken to the face of the wall. But the code does allow certain obstructions to encroach within the setback, and staff would be supported in this case of a deck that extends 3 or 4 feet towards that setback. We'd be supportive. Something much larger, it would likely have to be step back. So as shown, we can support that encroachment.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Valadez? Okay, thank you. I'll open up the floor for public comment.
If you would like to comment, please use the raise hand function or *9 on your phone. Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. This is the time we bring it back to you for rebuttal, but there's nothing to rebut. So I'll open the floor and see if you have any closing comments, Mr. Valadez.
No, thank you. I just want to say I appreciate everybody's attention on the project and look forward to moving it forward. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll bring it back to the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission for comments. I can't tell if Commissioner Heising is raising his hand or not.
I was raising my pencil.
Okay.
With my hand.
Okay, so you're up then.
All right. Hey, so this goes back to Jonathan. I had a question earlier to the applicant about if there was commercial, it was a combo commercial residential project, and the response was they couldn't meet parking. But if there had been an affordable unit in the residential portion of the project and they were able to have concessions and waivers, could you have had a parking waiver on the commercial portion of the project? And could they have still perhaps had a combo commercial residential project?
I believe they could have done a concession or waiver for parking requirements.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And then kind of tied to, if you look at the cross section, if you look at sheet A301, you can see the utility poles. If this property's being developed, why aren't those poles being undergrounded? Isn't now our chance, this is our chance for the bite at the apple to get that undergrounded. If we don't do it with this project, those poles are going to stay there forever.
I believe we can make that a condition of approval, similar to other projects in the past.
Okay, those are my 2 questions for staff, my follow-up questions for staff, but I have a couple more things for aesthetics.
Excuse me, Commissioner Heising, what figure were you just looking at when you were talking about the poles?
I was looking at the attachment to the staff report.
A301, right?
A301 exterior elevations, and in the top.
Yeah, I see it now.
Yeah, Second Street. It's on that access alley.
Yeah. Okay.
And then those people are going to have that outdoor living space or those 3rd-story balconies. Then you're going to see telephone holes out there. So I just figured now's the chance to get them undergrounded. That's all I have for now, Chair.
Thank you. Floor is open. Who would like to comment, if any? I think Commissioner Mason's coming in.
Yeah, Jonathan, would it be, I'm basically in favor of the project. Design review is going to do what they do, but I'm generally in favor. But I'm in favor of it as apartments. Would it be possible to do a condition of approval that if it's going to be condominiumized, they have to come back before the planning commission?
I'd ask if Greg has experienced that in the past.
I don't know that we have imposed such a condition before. We can certainly speak with the city attorney before the matter comes back to you to see if that's a possibility. I think it would be helpful for us to understand the nature of the condition. If all the provisions apply to both multifamily rental and multifamily condo in our sort of form and function of the code. Could you articulate what we might be looking at additionally if it were a subdivision?
No, I'm not looking for anything different. It's just that I have a belief that we need more rental housing. We do not need more high-priced Mount Diablo frontage for sale units. They serve different groups of people, and that is my chief concern. I realized they couldn't make that a townhome without redoing the map, which would have to go through us, but as a condo, that's a different ballpark, and that's whether I'm looking at a for sale or a for rent changes how I view giving up office and giving up other things. I have no trouble giving up. We need more office. We're losing it. I have no trouble giving that up for rent because we need more for rent housing in Lafayette. We don't need more for sale, high price for sale housing in Lafayette.
Very good. Well, inquire with the city attorney.
We have any other comments on the project? Commissioner Gray?
Thank you. I'd be happy to address some comments related to the scope of the Design Review Commission. We had the chance to have a study session regarding this project by now almost a year and a half ago. And it's good to see it come back. And I appreciate there have been many improvements. Well, I'm a little saddened to lose the commercial. I understand why. My comments are regarding primarily the expression as seen from the two frontage streets. I would support the recommendations by staff, all of them. I think they're well thought out, but I do want to bring specific attention to those addressing the Mount Diablo and the Second Street frontages. The idea of taking the decks that are currently facing the alley on the south building and rearranging the plans so they face Mount Diablo Boulevard, to me, seems like a very good suggestion and does a lot of positive things. It creates a story break to make the street expression really much more similar to the adjacent properties. You know, there are some substantial developments to the east and a future one to the west, and both of those have two-story expressions on Mount Diablo Boulevard. And I think this would be more consistent with the scale of that neighborhood if you make that move. And then another factor there is that would bring, as noted in the downtown guidelines, eyes on the street. I think that's a good place to allow for the residents to have that kind of oversight. And to me, it's more appealing and more spacious than having those balconies facing a driveway alley. So I do hope that you consider that in the next design iteration. The other one I wanted to point out is just a repeat comment on the Second Street side. The north building, you have improved it significantly. I appreciate that. but there still is a large blank portion of it, about 2/3, which I would urge you to consider doing something to liven it up, both with the facade and with some more substantial landscape on the Second Street side. And finally, I know you're aware of the fire district comments, but when you come to us next time, I do hope that the design addresses that. I think the project is going in a good direction. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Seidel.
Thank you. I want to echo Commissioner Gray's comments. I agree absolutely that the balconies would be better on the Mount Diablo side, but I'm more concerned with the Second Street elevation. To me, it feels not as coherent as a consistent elevation as the other two elevations are. And I do feel pretty strongly that it's a dominant elevation of the building. So I would be interested in seeing more of a horizontal language that carries across from the one side to the other, even though they're split by the driveway, and just less significant solid walls, I think would just make it feel more appealing. Right now, it feels a little bit like one half is almost a collage of different pieces, and the other half is a big chunk of stucco, and then a narrow portion of more developed elevation. It just feels that it should be more consistent from Orchard to Mount Diablo.
Thank you. Any other comments? Let's see, Chair Cass.
Yeah, I agree mostly with my other design review commissioners' comments. I'd like to say, first of all, I'm very glad to see that the affordable will be low income. We've seen many of these density bonus come in at moderate, and we really need to meet that low income need. I agree with them about the balconies, although I'm a little undecided about the Second Street facade. I agree that the facade is sort of needs some work. I sort of like the wraparound windows that are in the front building, but of course that doesn't really fit into the balconies that you've installed in the back corner, the northeast corner. So I do think that facade needs some work. I'm not sure what it will be exactly. Juliet balconies, again, to reiterate the thing that Jonathan looked up, is it can protrude out, but it cannot have any support going down to the ground. So just so you know, is that that's part of the requirement. I agree with Commissioner Sturm about the need for ADA access, particularly about the viability of those front units being any work related at all. I hate to see the landscape be diminished by any percentage, but I don't see any other way around it other than make it a continuous walkway at the lower level to get there. The colors are all right with me. I like the colors, and generally I'm favorable with what we are seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Heising had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to add my 2 cents on the balconies. I agree that moving them, if they were on the front on Mount Diablo side, I think it'd break up that front wall, so it just didn't look so flat there, and give a little bit of a even though we're not doing, there's a waiver or concession for the 50-foot third story setback, at least it would give it a little bit of a notch there with the balcony. And from a personal standpoint, I'd rather sit out there and have a beer and look out over Mount Diablo than the alley, you know? So, and then my last thought is the lighting in the courtyard is just, I forget what Tony called those things that holds the art, those little metal concrete wall things. The lights are behind those and kind of confined to that one area. I think if there was also lights brought out towards the corner more and wrapping the corner going down, you know, maybe on the back of walk down that landscaped area. I think at night it would look pretty cool and it would kind of open up that whole area and from a aesthetic standpoint. So just a thought on the lights. I don't know, maybe some might think that's light pollution. I think it would be kind of neat. So just a thought on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Labange?
I think every time we're in a meeting, I say I'm definitely not an architect, and I never make comments to that. But I'm going to do one tonight. It's because I feel left out. Actually, I'm not going to do it as an architect. I'm going to do it as a renter. So on the balcony, my thought would be, wouldn't it be nice if my balcony didn't have a balcony on both sides? So could they be staggered possibly? So I'm just looking at the front on Mount Diablo. I like the one closest to 2nd Street. I like how you have the wrap already. So I would hate to mess that up at all, but there's 4, right? So possibly the 2nd coming from 2nd Street in and the 4th could be staggered. So it's just an idea. I think if I was renting these and I had a balcony, the only problem with that though is then they get narrow because they're not going to have a balcony next to them. So I think they're going to have walls up all the way. But if that could protrude out, if that could be the ones that protrude out without having the support, so they don't have that wall next to them, that might be a way around that. And it just would give people a little more privacy on their balconies, since they wouldn't have someone 2 feet away, possibly. And then on the ramp idea, in my day job, I deal with the ramps a lot of times, and unfortunately, you know, running a long ramp can really change the dynamics of what you're trying to do. So I think Commissioner Cass mentioned it, I think, or maybe it was Commissioner Gray, but going from the very first one and running close to the front, you know, but it would destroy some of that landscaping. But I do think, to Commissioner Stern's point, that having that flexibility for the long term is ideal, because we don't know what the future is going to hold. So having the ability to have accessibility all the way across the front, I think would be very important. That's all I have.
Thank you. I believe Vice Chair Radnich had her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is a question for staff. We had a similar project that's currently under construction at Brown and Mount Diablo with the same type of live work in the bottom that also had an affordable unit. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 units, but I remember the discussion came up then as well about ADA access. And so I was just hoping staff can remind me and others, is each unit that has live workspace, is each unit required to have ADA access, or is a certain percentage of units required, or is the fact that it simply is live work, that the fact that it has a work component means every unit needs to have access?
There are different requirements for different building types and ownership types, and there are people on the meeting who would know better than I, but my recollection with the Brown Avenue was that not all of the units, but a fraction of them would have to be ADA accessible. But we can ask the building department to give us guidance on that as they review and implement the ADA for projects. And so before the matter comes to the DRC and PC, we can get that guidance from the building department.
Okay, thank you. And then the other, I guess, the follow-up, and again, I apologize for my ignorance on this. Access would need to be through the front door, that someone who doesn't require ADA access, the same location or the same way that someone who doesn't require ADA access would access the building. So for example, just really simplified, there's a front door right here on Mount Diablo, but your ADA access, I assume, could not be through the garage into the live workspace. It would need to be through the same door on Mount Diablo. If you could also clarify that. Thanks.
And the only thing I'll add on that, and definitely not as a lawyer, not speaking on behalf of Lafayette, just to be very clear personally here. I think the other thing with the Brown Avenue was those were going to be open to the public, like those units. So there's a different issue with ADA access versus live work, where somebody is working at home, but nobody from the public is coming to use the space. So that's also another dynamic of whether you have to have accessibility versus not. Just putting that out there too.
Okay, well, thanks, Chair. So I guess that's another question I have then that I wasn't quite clear from the presentation. These units wouldn't be open. Let's just say I had this little honey or something. I don't know. Could people come up to my door and purchase something, or are these specifically like how my company is working from home these days, and these would be where I work within my home? So can staff clarify the type of units and the intended use? Thanks.
My understanding is it's work from home office space.
Yeah, that's what
Personal.
I was. Yeah. That's what I thought. And that's why I was bringing up the other one. They were actually going to be open as commercial spaces to enter.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Labange, then Commissioner Heising.
I actually pulled it up because we have it electronically. It's actually on the city's website too, but from our staff report back then, the city's website shows a picture of the front, and I thought they were all accessible. They're not. There's steps on of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. 1, 2, 3. 4 of them have steps. So I just want to throw that out there because I do remember we talked about that, but they have, they're not accessible except 2 on the farthest east side. They don't have as much of a grade issue, but they have a little grade. So just be aware of that. And I also don't think it's a bad idea, even with our current one, that it's a work from home. You know, we didn't know 3 years ago we were going to be doing work from home. We don't know what we're going to do in 3 years from now. So having the ability to have a retail component, you know, again, it goes back to the flexibility. The more flexibility we have, the more we can future-proof it. So I'm for the flexibility part. But just for clarity, they didn't have it on Brown either, which I didn't remember. I had to look up. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Sorry, Commissioner Heising.
Yeah, no, I just want to add on to this ADA discussion. And I thought of this looking at the first sheet on the plan set G0. And then also when you look at the Carlson Barbie Gibson, the civil design plans, the grading and drainage plan. So you have risers coming off of Mount Diablo. Obviously, there's those steps. There's a number of steps to get down to grade in front of those units. But if you look, you can, someone in a wheelchair could access off 2nd Street, and they could, the path of travel would be through the courtyard and then to that southeast unit, and you can get all the way along there. And that would be one way to provide access without putting in a ramp, because I also hate the idea of gobbling up all that space and chewing into the landscape and all the benefits that that area provides with a ramp. So that might be something the architect or the civil folks look into without having to chew up that space. Just a thought.
Thank you.
That was it.
Commissioner Sturm.
Thanks, Commissioner Heising. That's actually what I was thinking. I didn't see enough elevations to get a clear understanding as to whether, like, how much grade change we would have there, because I saw there are stairs on the north side of that plaza that seem to go up to this level that wraps around. But they have the 3D views also show a railing that comes up to that southeast corner. So yeah, hopefully it's workable, sort of providing a, you know, a ramp or at least a sloping walkway that is in compliance with accessibility. And I didn't understand. I was thinking that these were live work spaces too, that could potentially be open to clients. And I am not sure whether ADA requirements, which are for public buildings, would apply to those, but just from a conceptual standpoint, if there was a massage therapist or something, you know, and I think my thing is to make everything accessible to as many people as possible. So if it seems pretty easy to do. So I'll put my 2 cents in that I too support all of staff's recommendations, and you know, cannot currently make the findings that tie back to those recommendations, but would be able to if modifications were made in line with the recommendations. I actually, in terms of the upper level balconies, I liked Commissioner Gray's idea about, and staff's idea about flipping the units. I think if that causes some other issues to pop up, I like as many balconies as possible. So if there's space there for, you know, a usable depth balcony off of some of those living room spaces on the Mount Diablo frontage, I think that would be great. You know, you could have sliding doors, and I think you could probably still figure out a furniture plan there. And then I also just wanted to make a comment. I realize that the plans have more development to go, but some of the balconies are pretty small, and the plans are showing outswing doors that essentially take up, with the sweep takes up the whole balcony space, which would prevent it from, you know, from having clear space for a small table or chairs so that they can be habitable, usable spaces. So I'd ask that the applicant look at that. You know, maybe it looks like you just don't have room for that kind of outswing door operation. And then, you know, I'll defer to the design review commissioners on materiality and articulation, but if the repetitiveness is addressed, I think that's helpful. But to me, I just felt like for the building to sit nicely in its immediate context and the context of the east end of downtown, I would like to see it softened a little bit. And I don't know exactly how that would be done, but it seems like some of the detailing with this sort of framing of the top 2 stories is a little bit harsh for residential project and harsh for the street. And it also tends to accentuate the vertical. So I would love to see some more horizontal elements introduced to sort of try to bring the height down, or at least how the height feels, and soften the building a bit. And I think that's all. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, I'll just weigh in here at the end on this, and like Commissioner Labange, I don't play architect, so I always defer on this. I agree with the staff's recommendations. I'm speaking now in terms of if I rented one of those places, I would prefer to have the balcony on the Mount Diablo side to have something to look at, to be part of the scene, so to speak, to have something instead of looking at an alley, as Commissioner Heising said. And I really like the small public area. I wish we had more of those. So I appreciate the fact that the applicant made that change. And I think Commissioner Gray said this earlier. I think there's been a great improvement from the study session proposal until now, and it's great work with the DRC to get there. I think we're getting close to getting this moving forward with the recommendations in place, but I like it. I'm glad we're getting more housing and rental housing. So that's my 2 cents. Greg, to confirm here, we still need to make a motion based on this to move it forward, correct? I know this is recommendations, but we still need a motion based on the recommendations, correct?
Yes, it'd be helpful to have a formal motion and a vote to forward the matter to the Design Review Commission, and then return to the Planning Commission before moving on to the council.
Okay, great, thank you. With that, I'll open up the floor and I'll look at Vice Chair Radnich.
You can just say
that's our Planning Commission joke, because she usually takes the first shot at it.
Okay, well, then I'm gonna take Greg's suggestion here. So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, with that, I will go ahead and take the vote. Let me just take it separately amongst the DRC and then Planning Commission. So let me go that route. Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
Commissioner Seidel.
Aye.
Chair Cass.
Aye.
Moving on to the Planning Commission. Let's see here. Commissioner Heising.
Aye.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner Labange.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturm.
Aye.
Vice Chair Radnich.
Aye.
And Chair Farzan. Aye. So unanimous approval on that. One question, is this something, there isn't an appeal on this, or is there, Greg?
No, there's
Yeah.
not. So you've not taken a formal action to approve or deny. So we will provide new public notice when it goes to the Design Review Commission.
Now,
Thank you.
do we have a date? Because I thought some of the paperwork said that this expires on November 1st or something.
Yes, we'll need to have the applicant consider a PSA extension. I believe it does elapse on the first week of November. The recommendation is for the second DRC meeting in November. I believe that is the
November 24th.
Yes.
Commissioner
Hey.
Gray.
If I may, a question on that 24th. That is the day before Thanksgiving. Last year, we had a meeting the day before Thanksgiving, and there was some public complaint that was not easy for people to attend. So I wonder if that should be reconsidered.
So I actually also appreciate that comment, not just on Thanksgiving. We've had comments near major holidays. So again, I'm gonna be completely frank here. People think that meetings are put there so the public doesn't show up to them, and that's not what we're doing. So I would agree, if we can get it outside of that holiday window, I would be in favor of that too.
The meeting following would be December 15th.
I guess the question I have, could it be before? Or is there not enough time?
There's no prohibition on before, and the meeting calendar is clear and adopted by the council. So it's following a second and fourth Wednesday pattern, the fourth Wednesday being immediately before Thanksgiving. So we could defer that for 1 week and thus have it on December 1st instead, which I think would be appropriate. Not have it during the holiday week, but the following week, it would just mean that we would have the 1st and the 15th in December. And I have concern about pushing all the way to December 15th. That's 3 weeks out. So if if it's acceptable to the design review commissioners, we could schedule it for December 1st.
That works for me. I don't hear anything from the architect though.
Fine with me.
Yeah, I would say with the applicant, should tell us if they can be ready for that.
Yeah, and if we can feasibly put it on the November 10 meeting, we can try for that as well, which is regularly scheduled.
Okay.
But in any case, we'll provide new public notice of the hearing date.
Thank you. With that, I think we can excuse the design review commissioners. Thank you very much for attending. Oh, maybe not. Hold on. There's a hand up from Greg.
If it pleases the commission, I'll just offer that this coming Monday night, the city council will hear a presentation from the city attorney's office regarding two recent state laws which were passed, those being SB 9 and SB 10, which potentially have some significant changes to the regulatory framework in Lafayette. So you are all invited to attend, and then we'd be happy to discuss it further we can put it on your agendas if you so desire to discuss further, but that would be, I think, informational for all the commissioners.
Okay,
Thank you. Again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night. We are now moving to item number 9. Do we have any commissioners' reports? Vice Chair Radnich.
GPAC, there's a lot going on GPAC. Last week we had a special meeting where we went line by line through the goals and the program. So that was it was a really good meeting. I don't know if people were able to tune in for that. We have our regular third Tuesday of the month meeting tomorrow for GPAC. And then on Thursday of this week, we also have a special meeting to go over the mission statement. So tell everybody you know and try to come and provide comment. One thing that I think was interesting, we've been talking a lot about is just capturing public comment, right? How do you, people have so many thoughts on it, and obviously the more you can comment, the better. And so I think this actually applies to Planning Commission as well, of just really reminding the public that if you have a comment or a thought on a project in support or against or improvements or just general thoughts on anything that's on an agenda, definitely write to the city planners and they will, forward it to the appropriate group or join a meeting, GPAC, Planning Commission, whatever it is, and provide your comment in the 3-minute time. It's really important, and it's becoming really obvious on GPAC, especially when we're having these really focused additional special meetings, like on the mission statement or the goals, that sort of thing. So I think those are the basic updates.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners' reports? Okay. Item number 10, Planning Director's report.
So in addition to advising about the council meeting this coming Monday and SB 9 and SB 10, on September 24th, Mayor Kandel, Councilmember Gina Dawson, Diana Elrod, and I presented our appeal of our RENA allocation, 2,114 units. We were with 6 other jurisdictions on day 1 of the appeal hearings, which I think are spanning a total of 5 days throughout October, September and October. So we were day 1, and all 7 of the appeals on that day were denied preliminarily. So the administrative committee, acting as the appeals hearing body, heard, deliberated, and then took preliminary action to deny each of the 7. They'll take final action at the end of this month after they've heard all the appeals. Thus far, day 2 has happened. 3 additional appeals were heard. 2 jurisdictions were denied, and Contra Costa County was partially granted for a total, I think, of 35 units. Stemming from an area in Contra Costa County, which is pending annexation to Pittsburgh. And so Pittsburgh was said that they'd be happy to take on those numbers as part of that. So that was the only appeal that was partially granted thus far. So I'll leave it there. Oh, following on that, the mayor asked staff to draft a letter to ABAG and MTC regarding the use of the errata. So if you read the appeal materials, we pointed out that the growth geographies excluded very high fire hazard severity zones, and all of the information up until the point the executive board adopted the RENA allocations Bay Area wide, said that public lands were, for the purposes of Plan Bay Area 2050, were within growth geographies, thus outside of very high fire hazard zones. But public lands in Lafayette included the BART parking lots. And so our allocation increased from roughly 1,660 units in September of last year to 2,114, a 28% increase at the end of the year. And that was a function not of the methodology changing, but Plan Bay Area 2050 growth, projected growth. And that was partly a function of 10 new strategies which were added. I think I've spoken to you before, but that increase was partly based on public lands, and we identified the error, and ABAG staff corrected it through an errata, just striking the language so that public lands did not need to be within, or were not within, growth geographies. So the letter suggests that errata shouldn't be used to essentially change policy, but rather should be for technical changes only. And I'll forward a copy of the letter to you.
Thank you. Is it, I haven't seen anything. I'm assuming the city council hasn't decided on next steps whenever the final decision comes in, or was this considered the final step?
No final action has been taken by ABAG yet, until the end of the month. I would expect their final action to be consistent with their preliminary action. And there's not an appeal process beyond the appeal itself, other than potentially challenging in court. And it's not entirely clear that there's statutory language that would allow a city to, or jurisdiction to do that.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we will move to item number 11, ARC volunteer. Do we know what date that's for?
Yes, I can pull it up. Next Friday, the 29th. And you may, any volunteer may get to see a Halloween costume from someone on staff or multiple members.
This is still 9:30-ish
Yes,
and by Zoom.
yes. You're welcome
Uh,
to come into the city offices and see if anything happens to look different.
Fantastic. I have not done one of these in a while, so I'll take the next one. As in the 29th, yes, then I'll take that one, to be clear.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anything further, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.